relationships, sex, passion with Dr. Laurie Betito. Hear the show live weeknights 10 to 11 on CJAD 800.
Welcome to Passion, a show all about love, sex, and relationships. I'm Dr. Laurie Betito. I'm a clinical psychologist and a sex therapist, and your host, Monday to Friday, 10 to 11 p.m. Tonight, we're going to talk about a very important subject, something that affects, I'm not even sure how many, I just know it's a lot. A lot of people who live with anxiety and depression, but anxiety is a big one. I see it in my office a lot. And what ends up happening is that when you have one partner who suffers from anxiety, the couple suffers the consequences, of course. There's an impact on the family, on the couple, and we need to talk about this. What can we do for anxiety? And it's not just anxiety in relationships. Anxiety permeates our sexuality, goes into the bedroom, our work environment, our family life, everywhere. So it's something that we should learn how to cope with. And to help us with that is Sandra tonight. She is the clinical director of the Montreal Centre for Anxiety and Depression. Welcome to the program.
Oh, happy to be here.
It's great to have you on the program for a good hour, so we should be able to get the whole topic and get to the meat of it. And you'll give us some tips, and we'll find out how we can do better. And in fact, just one of the things that I want to let people know about is that you're holding an event on August 27th from 7 to 9 p.m. for, and this is basically an event, a workshop for anybody who wants to take it, right?
Absolutely.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, usually our workshops are about anxiety per se, and I decided to go a little bit underneath that. I decided to talk about how living a purposeful life. And the thing is, there's a lot of traps that people get into in their lives that get them into trouble in terms of finding happiness and peace. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times when they fall into the traps, that's a good way to get anxiety. So if an example, if you're not living a clean life, that comes and bites you, and a symptom might show up. So I want to talk a little bit more about what are the things that you can do to make sure your life is purposeful, meaningful, and immunize yourself against anxiety and depression.
And that's so important, because I do find that a lot of people go through the motions of life feeling a bit robotic about life and lose that have that question, like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
What am I here for? I work, I toil, I can't stand what I'm doing, or I'm in a lousy marriage, or I'm, feeling all of this. What am I doing? How do I change this? Or people kind of feel a little bit stuck. And when they get stuck is when they start to get panicky, right? And the anxiety starts to build.
Yeah, well, a little bit. Sometimes we get stuck and we sell our soul. And, I like to say, when you sell your soul, it costs $1 billion.
How do you sell your soul?
You make deals. You're like, everybody else's life is bad, so it's okay if my life is bad too. And people commiserate together and say, well, my husband's bad, but her husband's even worse.
Right.
So you start to fall into that negative cycle. You don't want to do that. We're really big believers in reaching for the stars.
Good.
Why not?
That's right. Why not?
Yeah.
Absolutely. If you have questions for Sandra clinical director of the Montreal Centre for Anxiety and Depression, or you have lived with anxiety or depression, tell us about the impact on your marriage, on your relationship, whether it's you or your partner who has suffered from anxiety and or depression. We would love to hear from you at 514-790-0991. You can also text us at 514-800. And Sandra's here really to answer any questions that you have about ways that you can cope, or maybe you have a particular situation you want to discuss with her, and she will certainly, advise you in the right direction. Their website, by the way, is helpforanxietydepression.com, helpforanxietydepression.com, especially if you want information about the special event taking place on Tuesday, August 27th, 7 to 9 p.m. I will be in attendance at the workshop as well, so you can come and say hello to me, and we'll enjoy, I think, a very good talk about finding that purpose and finding, that happiness. And maybe we could talk about happiness a little bit, because I noticed that people look kind of from the outside to see how do I, if I do this, I'll be happy, or when I get rid of this, I'll be happy. And you said two words before. You said happiness and peace. And to me, they're the same. Peace, That's what we should be striving for, is that inner peace. That, to me, is happiness.
You're 100% right. If you have inner peace, you have everything. I mean, happiness, we look at Facebook, we see people on Facebook, they're looking at their pictures. Everyone puts pictures of how happy they are. And I call it the Facebook phenomena. So everyone thinks everyone else's life is going so well.
Right.
It doesn't mean anything. It means nothing. But if your relationship with yourself is okay, almost, anything can be overcome. That's not a problem. And that's what called resiliency. And that's what we need in life, because life has many twists and turns. But if we know we can survive those twists and turns, we're okay. It does take some work, though, because you have to take responsibility. You have to be honest. That's a lot of what I'm going to talk about, too, is getting honest, getting real with yourself about even the good, the bad, and the ugly in ourselves, because we all have it.
We all have it.
It's
right.
okay.
Right. We all have baggage. You can't escape baggage. That's how we're made. It's like it's a bunch of puzzle pieces. We are all puzzles with a lot of pieces. Some have more pieces than others,
for sure.
Right? But we all have some pieces at least, right? So
but if we own it and we work with it, the stars are the limit, like I said before. We just have to be okay with it, because when we accept ourselves, we can move to the next level. When we don't accept it, we're stuck.
How would you describe for our listeners what anxiety is? If somebody doesn't know, because not everybody's diagnosed with an anxiety disorder, but they may actually be suffering from anxiety.
A lot of us suffer from anxiety, and one of the best ways to define it is that there's fear, which is adaptive. I mean, if someone comes in here and starts shooting us, we should be afraid.
Right.
Anxiety is fear of fear. What if someone comes in here and shoots us? So we're always wondering what could happen. And it's very common because we don't like, as humans, feeling out of control. Right. So what we try to do is we grasp onto control. And the more we try to grasp onto control, the more anxiety we're going to get. Because actually, other than ourselves, we don't have control. I have no control over what's going to happen here tonight. I have no control over who's going to walk into the studio. So the more I can get okay with the fact that things outside of me are not in my control, but if someone comes in here, I will know what to do. I'm okay. So anxiety starts with that idea that I can control my external environment, which is not true. And I'm going to also be afraid of the possible things that can go wrong. And there are a lot of things in life that can go wrong. It's true.
But they can also go right.
That's right.
Right. And I think that's the thing, is people have this, they play the what if game. Always what if this, and then they go, and it's amazing how far a what if game can go.
Oh, it's amazing.
I mean, it's like layers and layers and layers, and like, wait, it hasn't even why are you worrying about it now? It may never happen.
It's a lot of wasted energy, and it comes to what you were talking about, relationships, because when you're with someone who's doing the what if game, they're going round and round and round, and the other person stops to exist to a certain extent. And there is a great strategy with the what if game. I've mentioned it before quite recently, which is that you can turn almost any what if in life to a so what if. I mean,
I like that. So what if? Yeah.
Other than death, it's all survivable. Right. So what if I say something silly tonight? So what if I say something silly? I won't like it. I'll admit that, but it's survivable.
But so what? Exactly.
Yeah, I'll survive it.
We'll get over it, right?
Yes,
so
exactly.
What? I think that so reminds me of that. I'll never forget the intense fear and anxiety before my very first show here. Before my first time, I was like, what if I screw up the buttons? Yeah. And what if I stop talking? Yeah. I was talking to myself, right? So I was like, I've never talked to myself. What if? And it was like, oh my God. And then I realized, okay, if I screw up, so they'll never have me back again, Yeah.
So, well, you did it. You did the so what if. And
it's
that
like,
calmed you down.
That's right. So what if? And then, 14 years later, it's like, so what if, And it might just happen, right?
And it seems to be going well.
Yes, well, thankfully, it's okay. You're listening to Passion tonight. We're talking about anxiety and its impact on relationships, especially. And we'll talk about sexual anxiety as well tonight. You can join the discussion with Sandra of the Montreal Centre for Anxiety and Depression, right here on Passion on CJAD 800.
You're listening to Passion with Dr. Laurie Betito on CJAD 800.
We're discussing anxiety tonight on the program. Sandra is with us, Clinical Director of the Montreal Centre for Anxiety and Depression. If you have questions for Sandra, or myself, and you want to talk about anxiety or issues that you've had with anxiety, how you've coped with it in your relationship, how it's affected your marriage or your relationship, we'd love to hear from you at 514-790-0991, or you can text us at 514-800. So we talked about easy enough to understand what anxiety is. At which point, because I think we all have some level of anxiety. And I do think that it's normal when we are faced with the unknown that we're going to have some level of fear or anxiety of what might happen. It's a question of how do we calm ourselves down?
Yeah.
Right? So at which point do you say, okay, you know what? You need more help. Like you need to see somebody, you need medication, this is getting out of control. How do you know when it gets out of control?
If it's interfering with your life. That's the bottom line, the quality of your life. So, the stress response, as you well said, is very adaptive. If we had no stress, we'd be dead. So stress is part of it. We don't want to live in bubbles and protect ourselves from stress completely. But if it starts to interfere with my life, so I can't take my car somewhere because I'm afraid something that can happen, it's starting to interfere. If my relationship, if all I talk about is my anxiety, it's going to have an impact on my relationship.
Or if I have a social anxiety and I don't want to go out and my partner wants to go out and I'm stuck at home now, and he's stuck at home or she's stuck at home, that's something else as well,
we see
right?
that a lot at the clinic, and it's very hard on the partner, too.
I'm quite sure. Let's hear from Robert online. Hi, Robert. Welcome to the show.
Hi, good evening.
Hi.
I've called in many times to talk about my relationship problems. I'm now in a relationship where my ex is pregnant, and I'm obviously not with her anymore.
Are you the father? Oh, wait, hold on.
You asked me that last time, and it was with a bunch of guys. and yes, I'm 100%. I'm the father.
Okay.
It's not the case.
I'm sorry I keep repeating myself. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page,
don't worry.
okay?
My mom asked me the same question.
Okay, good.
The question, I guess for me, is like, just for myself calling in, my heart is racing. I know it's like, it's the manner I am. I've ruined so many good relationships because of, I guess, my anxiety. I was diagnosed being bipolar by a doctor, though, who only saw me for about 5 minutes. And he says, okay, you're bipolar, here's some pills. And I had friends tell me otherwise. I said, dude, don't take this. You're not this type of person. You're a good person, but there's these type of women that just drive that out of you, that I don't even know how to describe it, but they just, pick at you. They're like a tick, and they just keep digging and digging. And,
But isn't that interesting that you say that? It's interesting how you've turned it so that it's the women who pick, but what about your response and how you respond to that, how you take that? Because nobody's going to pick at you if you don't let them pick at you.
But you said it before. The woman, I'm sorry, I forgot her name.
Sandra.
Sandra, you had said that, thinking about work and money and all of this, and that becomes an anxiety because you're scared of fear and things that are going to happen. But is that not part of life? And if that other person doesn't have that same anxiety about that same situation, then there's a problem.
The problem is they're not feeling the same anxiety as you?
Well, maybe that they don't care as much.
Okay, maybe they're coping differently with the fears outside. Like I said, the fears outside of yourself, like money and health, there's a certain reality that we don't really have that much control over those things outside of ourselves, so we take it one day at a time. The difficulty is if you're spending a lot of time stressing about it, it's very normal that when you're the person stressing, it becomes all about you, which is understandable, but it's very hard on the partner because what about her? What about her needs in this? So she might be coping yes, these are difficulties. Yes, these are stressors, but let's take it one day at a time. And that might be very frustrating for you, but it doesn't mean she doesn't care.
That's right, because you're interpreting that as you don't care as much as me because you're not as nervous about this or stressed because we have these financial issues or whatever it is. When in fact, that's not what's going on. It's just that you both are coping very differently with it.
Yeah. Can I ask something else?
Uh-huh.
I personally, I don't even know the name of the pills that I was prescribed. I took them for maybe 3 cycles of renewing them, and honestly, it was like the job. I work in collections. I'm a debt collector, and I cannot take those pills for the kind of work that I'm in. You know, it's I need to be myself and not be some zombie. Is there anything that can calm my nerves, that can help out in anxiety situations, that I can, you know, everybody always tells me just get up and walk away, but I can't. You know, it's just in my nature to turn around and still have not the last word, but just that my own opinion. And obviously it's something different that carries on a conversation, but they always seem, oh, you're raising your voice. I'm not raising my voice. I'm just in tune into this conversation now so in depth that, you know, I guess I become so anxious.
Okay, well, first of all, earlier in the phone call, you said that you were diagnosed after 5 minutes, and that's problematic first and foremost. You can't be diagnosed after 5 minutes. So I don't know what pills you were given, but I don't like the idea of diagnosis in 5 minutes.
You know, I was picked up by the ambulance, and they brought me to the hospital. I had no choice but to see this doctor before they released me, and he says, I'll release you under the condition that you take these pills.
Well, I would revisit that to try to get a more thorough evaluation.
Yeah,
I do
agree.
want to mention though that anxiety and anger work on the same systems in the body, so you actually can't be anxious and angry at the same time. So a lot of anxious people do get angry easily. It's a way of getting rid of their anxiety. So maybe when you're in those situations and you can't walk away, maybe it is because you're feeling very anxious, and that's what's coming out there.
All right.
Okay,
Thanks for your call, Robert. Appreciate it. All right, bye-bye. We're going to take a short break and come back with Sandra Reish of the Montreal Centre for Anxiety and Depression, and more of your phone calls and text messages right here on Passion on CJAD 800.
You're listening to Passion with Dr. Laurie Betito on CJAD 800.
Tonight we're talking anxiety, all about anxiety, its impact on relationships, with Sandra Reish, the clinical director of the Montreal Centre for Anxiety and Depression, who, by the way, are holding a workshop on Tuesday, August 27th from 7 to 9 p.m. on the West Island. helpforanxietydepression.com if you want to get more information. Let's go to Judy on the line. Hi, Judy.
Yes, hi.
Hi.
I hope I'm not being redundant because I just tuned in.
No, don't worry about it.
My question basically is this. Is depression the end result of anxiety? Unresolved anxiety?
That's a good question in terms of the relationship between the two.
It actually is an excellent question. So it's an interesting thing. Depression and anxiety, I like to call them first cousins. So they work very similarly. And a lot of people don't realize that depression can, in fact, be an anxiety disorder. So some people really manifest their what's going on for them on an external basis. We see them in panic attacks, worrying excessively. And some people really turn it inwards, and that shows up as a depression. The other common theme that I want you to consider is that repressed emotions has a big role in both these problems, in particular anger. So depression is often known as anger turned inwards, and anxiety is often known as repressed anger. So sometimes when someone has anxiety, we treat them, they get a lot better, and all of a sudden depression shows up, or vice versa. We treat the depression and anxiety shows up. So you really have to get to the root of that.
Okay, because I have an ongoing issue that is creating anxiety in me, and I know because I have difficulty sleeping, okay? Mm-hmm. And if I do sleep, I sleep fitfully. So I have the odd day of what I call the blues, which is very unusual for me. Mm-hmm. And I'm beginning to worry that, like, I feel I can resolve the anxiety if I get enough guts to say no.
You're on the ball there, though. You're on the ball. Because, as I said, repressed anger will lead to anxiety. Yes. So saying no would help.
Yeah. So I think I don't want to I'm getting more frequently those blue days, but maybe one every 3 weeks, whereas before it'd be one every 6 months. Mm-hmm. And now it's coming more frequently. And I haven't got the heart to tell this person, I'm sorry, no, it's over.
Well, you know what's great about this phone call is that you know the answer already. I love that. You already know the answer because You don't have the heart.
Yes.
So you're choosing that person over what you and your body needs. And that's going to always produce a symptom. So what you need to be working on is getting to the place that you decide that you need to choose yourself first. So yes, the other person might be disappointed, but you'll be liberated. Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so true what you're saying, because the anxiety now is I'm getting angry about it, because there's just no...
you feel trapped. It's almost like you feel trapped, right?
Almost.
Right.
My life is beautiful. I don't believe in fixing something that's not broken.
Good.
All right. Well, thanks for calling in, Judy. Great phone call.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Have a great night. More on the other side of the news with Sandra Reish, from the Montreal Center for Anxiety and Depression, and your questions here on Passion on CJAD.
You're listening to Passion with Dr. Laurie Betito on CJAD 800.
We're talking about anxiety and depression, and the impact on relationships. So this is a show about sex, love, and relationships. And we often, at least I often talk about, performance anxiety related to sexuality. But there's a whole other side, and that anxiety is common. Depression is rather common, and it has an impact inevitably on the relationship. So that's what we're talking about. And tonight we have the pleasure of having Sandra Reish, who is the clinical director of the Montreal Center for Anxiety and Depression, in studio with us. So if you have questions, comments, tonight is really the night. So let's go to Christina on the line. Hi, Christina. Welcome to the show.
Hi.
Hi.
I sometimes worrying build up my anxiety, but I learned from a lecture, take vitamin B100. I take 50 in the morning and 50 in the afternoon, and it does help.
You feel calmer, you mean?
It generally helps you to calm down. And some lectures said extra vitamin C helps.
Sandra, do you know any connection? Have you seen any studies with connections with vitamins?
I heard lectures.
I know. I'm asking Sandra here actually if she's ever heard of any studies.
Vitamin B is linked with definitely reducing stress. I don't know that it would work on a major basis, but definitely can't hurt.
So it's almost like what we use St. John's wort for minor or light depression and maybe light anxiety. So it might have that effect on you.
But I'm also of the belief that if it's working for you,
then go for it.
Great.
Exactly. Thanks so much for calling in, Christina. Appreciate it. We got some text messages here, Sandra. I check, double check, and triple check things, such as that the doors are locked. It does not disrupt my life, but it looks kind of weird and can be embarrassing. Is something wrong with me? OCD.
Yeah.
I smell OCD.
Yeah, you do. And the thing is that here's a very important line to remember is control is an illusion. I'll repeat it. Control is an illusion. So no matter how many times you check the door, you can't be sure that you're out of danger. So the problem is the more you're doing that, the more addictive it becomes. And the more addictive it becomes, it can generalize to more problems. So it is starting to interfere with your life. So it's not a question of being strange. It's a question of your brain is starting to get the belief that if you check the door enough, that you're safe. And there's actually no truth in that. So we're starting to go into something called magical thinking, which Dr. Laurie is exactly right. It's the beginnings of OCD. And
I remember having a friend, and you're saying it doesn't disrupt your life, but I remember every time we'd go out, it was a 10-minute ritual. So that affected me as her friend, that I'd have to wait till she checked make sure the toilet thing was closed, make sure the stove knobs, she would just stare. It had to be like 60 seconds of staring at the knobs to make sure they were not on, and then checking the every tap to make sure that there was no drip, and then the door, it had to be checked 5 times, like 4 times like this, and then another 4 times, and it was a whole 10-minute ritual. So it does affect your life. Like if you add up those 10 minutes every time you leave the house, don't tell me that doesn't affect, that doesn't take away something from your life.
Absolutely. And usually when we work with a client, we've had many clients with this issue, and it usually does trace back to something in their life where something felt out of control. Like I've had a patient where his father was never home. So he was sort of left in the surrogate husband role. So he took on checking the doors to make sure his mom was safe. So you want to get to the deeper issue to find out what's going on there. It really can be very liberating to get out of that.
Oh, I'm quite certain of that. So it's not that there's, something majorly wrong, but it is a compulsive disorder, and it doesn't have to rule your life, because you'd have to ask yourself, okay, what if I left without checking the doors? How would I feel then?
Well, at first you'd feel anxious, and then you'd soothe yourself, and eventually you'd be less anxious. And that's what we do in treatment. We don't actually make people not lock the doors when they compulsively do it first. We do it in steps.
Right.
And eventually you get your life back. You really get freedom's a very important part of life.
But you don't know that it's freedom if you've lived with it for a long time. It's almost like, this person is saying, it does not disrupt my life, but I would beg to differ that once you stop doing that, you'll notice how much it disrupted your life.
100%. And I think we were talking before about how important it is to say it straight to somebody. And I think you're saying it straight, that if you add up all the minutes that you spend checking the door, it is definitely taking energy and time out of your life. And energy and time are valuable commodities.
Yes, and that you can't get back.
Yeah, unfortunately not.
You cannot get those back. All right, and here's another text. My anxiety affected my marital sex life. Constantly reeling in the what-ifs while lying in bed would tense me up physically and make it impossible for me to emotionally let go of those anxious thoughts and be present in the moment with my husband. I'm better now that I'm on medication, but it's still an issue for my husband. He has resentment for being shut out for months and months. That is what I see a lot of, in terms of sexuality. In my office, that's, the symptom is the sexual problem, right? That brings them in, but the underlying cause is the anxiety.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, sex is a pleasurable activity, we hope, and emotions are tied into arousal. So if you're busy ruminating and being stressed and having anxiety, it's very hard for the body to be able to enjoy sex, and that's very difficult for your partner. So, there's things you can do about that, though. You can start the sexual experience can happen, as in steps. You can work with a warm bubble bath and massages. Another thing that people do that works quite well is using a distractor, such as romantic music in the background. Because, again, to have good sex, you have to be mindful. You have to be present. So if you're in your anxiety...
you have to be empty. Your brain has to be empty of all that stuff. And women are notorious for filling it with details. So, even without suffering from anxiety, you still have to work hard at letting some of that go to be able to be in the present and be in the moment. So you need to actually look for things that relax you, relax your body at the same time while you do something in your brain. You talk to yourself so that you're not ruminating, so that you're either singing a song or you're focusing on something else, which is why, for example, yoga really works beautifully is you're focusing on breathing. So you're breathing loudly in an exercise, like when you're doing yoga practice, you're breathing so loudly that that's all you're hearing. Yeah. Right? It's deafening in your own brain. So you can't think about anything else except your breath. So that's something else that you can also do. You don't have to do the yoga poses, but you can do the yoga breathing.
Absolutely.
In that respect too.
But Dr. Laurie, you bring up such an important point that exercise in general has a big impact with anxiety and even with the sex life, because it has a twofold effect. It relaxes you and you feel better about your body. Both factors in anxiety and sex.
That's right. Another text message, Sandra. I have a stammering problem, and this causes a lot of social anxiety in my life. I will not put myself in situations where I have to speak to people, especially people I don't know. My question is, I don't know whether I should be getting help with my stammering problem that might get rid of my anxiety or get help with anxiety.
Well, I think they're part and parcel of the same thing. And I think that the moment you start to work with that, the moment we start to expose a little bit of situation to reduce that anxiety, once again, we reopen the possibility of freedom. But that's done in steps, and it's done with someone really coaching you through that. It's not an easy situation, but it's very, very treatable. Want to mention one more thing. Whatever we avoid, anxiety increases. Avoidance is the friend of anxiety. You avoid seeing people, anxiety increases.
And there's no way to get over that if you keep avoiding the situation that is scary in the first place.
Yeah, it's like feeding a beast. I like to say that anxiety is like a little beast, and every time you avoid, you just fed the beast, and the beast just got bigger.
Right. It's sometimes like I look at people who are fearful of dogs, and they have been fearful of dogs since they were little, and now they're adults. That fear is like out of control in terms of just, they never confronted that fear. And if they had maybe worked on that even when they were younger, that wouldn't be there. It wouldn't have taken on such a huge such power, really.
Absolutely.
So yes, you do need help to do this. You should get help to do this. You don't need to live like this.
And you move towards, you get the help, and you move in small increments, because people are scared that if they come for help, we're just going to force them.
Throw them into a social situation, for example.
No,
right.
Not at all. We move in steps, slow, measurable steps that you're very involved with in the process.
Right.
It is a step-by-step process.
Right.
And
So it feels natural. It doesn't feel like you're suddenly being thrown. It's not like you can't swim and we throw you into the ocean. Okay, swim.
No.
Not at all. We'll answer more of your text messages, and you have time to call in 514-790-0991. You can text us at 514-800. Sandra Reish is my guest from the Montreal Centre for Anxiety and Depression, talking about how anxiety and depression has an impact on our relationships, and we'd love to hear from you if you have some experiences that you want to share with us right here on Passion on CJAD 800.
You're listening to Passion with Dr. Laurie Betito on CJAD 800.
We're having a delightful conversation with Sandra Reish of the Montreal Centre for Anxiety and Depression. Delightful on a very hard topic. This is not an easy topic to discuss. Anxiety and depression has a great impact on relationships. But you know what? Sandra's approach is great, because it's really about, we can fix this. We can fix this. It's not a problem. And I wholeheartedly agree. This is not something that people should live with. It is something that can be healed and we can learn to manage very well, but you have to be willing to go and get the help necessary to do it,
I like to say that it always gets better with help, and it always gets worse without dealing with it. So it seems like the natural thing is to go get the help. And so many people suffer, and there's no need. We can definitely help them.
And don't suffer for too long. Sometimes it takes people a very long time before they get help, when they could nip it, before it taking over their life. Hi, Dr. Laurie and Sandra. I had panic attacks in the past, but I'm okay now. Occasionally I feel a panic attack, but I know what it is now, and I take a deep breath and I'm okay. How I got over it is by walking long distance. It was that simple for me. I love that.
I love that too. I train therapists in my clinic, and I often say to them, if you don't teach your client about food, sleep, exercise, and you start teaching them fancy strategies, you're technically ripping them off. You've got to get to the basics. Food, sleep, exercise. Exercise is a very powerful strategy against anxiety. So you definitely want to take those walks. You definitely want to move the body. Adrenaline is released during exercise. If you don't eat properly, the brain gets irritable. And if you don't sleep, the brain gets irritable. You're going to be prone to anxiety.
That's right.
Very smart strategy.
Yeah, and the breathing. The breathing, I find also, I get my clients, when you have... Sometimes you have that, you're very much aware of your breath, or you have palpitations. You can actually kind of do biofeedback on yourself by just checking your pulse and bringing down your pulse.
Yeah.
You can slow down your heartbeat. And all of that by focusing on your breath. And while you're focusing on your breathing and slowing down your heartbeat, you're not concentrating anymore on the fears and the what ifs and all of that. So
true.
Breathing is so important.
Yeah, but you have to learn how to breathe. That's the thing, is we often think that, they say always in the newspaper, take a deep breath. A deep breath actually means from your abdominal muscles. And a lot of times we think it means like, and that actually can increase
That's worse,
anxiety.
because then you start to feel like you're hyperventilating. hyperventilating.
That's correct.
I can't get breath. I can't breathe.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's the yoga breath, or it's learning how to do deep breathing from your abdominal muscles. And it's incredible. Actually, it's not the inhale that reduces the anxiety. It's actually
the exhale.
exhale.
That's right.
Which a
And
lot
you
of us don't know.
empty your entire, you try to empty the breath.
That's it.
So, and you know, people have to learn this. I think it's really, really important. Somebody just said, why do you ladies not recommend breathing, walking, and meditation solutions? Well, that's exactly what we're talking about right now, is we do recommend breathing. Breathing is probably the most important. And Sandra's been talking about exercising, walking. Just simply walking, as our texter said, also it gets you in touch with nature, gets you thinking, feeling your environment. So it gets you focused on other things. I have clients who run, who for them running has helped them deal with their anxiety and all the voices in their head, you know.
Absolutely.
So there's that too. Very important. 514-790-0991. By the way, August 27th, 7 to 9 p.m., the Montreal Center for Anxiety and Depression presents a special event on living a purposeful life. Find meaning and happiness. Finally, tricks and strategies to live the life of your dreams. It's taking place at the Brunswick Medical Center, 7 to 9 p.m., Tuesday, August 27th. You can go to the website helpforanxietydepression.com for more information. So, Sandra, are you the one going to be giving the talk that night, the workshop?
I am.
Yeah?
I am.
Great.
I'm looking forward to it.
I'm looking forward to actually hearing you talk some more about this. I think there's so much. There's so much there, and we just don't have to suffer. As you said, there's no reason it's not necessary.
No. And we're co-creators of our life. There's so much we can do about our lives if we accept that we are co-creators of our lives.
Yeah. Coming up, I do want to talk to us. I want you to talk to us about, and I'll talk too together, about performance anxiety in the bedroom, because I see that more than anything, of course, being a sexologist, but the roots of it are anxiety. And when I see people with performance anxiety, they usually are anxious people. So we'll see how those two go together. Anyhow, we'll take a short break and come back with Sandra Risha from the Montreal Center for Anxiety and Depression right here on Passion on CJAD 800.
You're listening to Passion with Dr. Laurie Betito on CJAD 800.
Tonight we're talking about anxiety and its impact on relationships. The night's going so fast. Sandra Risha is here from the Montreal Center for Anxiety and Depression. Learning so much with you, Sandra. It's wonderful. Let's talk about the whole performance anxiety thing, because anxiety translates also in the bedroom. This is something I see quite a bit of, and it is the what if. You know, what if I don't get aroused? What if that erection doesn't happen? What if I don't climax? What if I don't pleasure her? What if he looks at me and sees fat? What if, you know, there could be so many of those what ifs. And what people have to understand is whenever you have a what if in the bedroom, nothing's going on down below the belt.
That's exactly
It just
right.
shuts it off. To me, it's almost like you're cutting a wire. You know, it shuts the signal off completely. What ifs mean nothing going on down there, because you can't be in two places at once. You have to be in your body.
It's exactly right, because the emotions are tied to arousal. So if you're busy worrying about things, your body just is actually not primed to be able to get excited. It's not going to work. So again, we've got the problem that you've got to come back to where you are in the situation. You've got to be present. It will not work. So if we're bringing anxiety into the bedroom and we're worrying about exactly the things you talked about, am I too fat? Am I going to take too long to reach orgasm? Is she going to be satisfied? Is he going to be satisfied? We're already not there. We're right not there, and the body just does not cooperate. Arousal is quite difficult. As a matter of fact, I thought it was interesting when I was thinking about coming on the show, I was looking into the fact that even blood vessels constrict in men when they're anxious.
Sure.
So therefore there's no blood going to the penis.
Well, that's because of the fight or flight response,
Exactly.
right? What happens when we're scared, our vital organs require the blood, and the penis is not a vital organ as much as guys may think it's a vital organ. It isn't. The heart, the lungs, the arms that you need to, to fight, the legs you need to run, that's where the blood is going. And those little tiny arteries that in your penis don't get filled with blood because your blood is going elsewhere. So with anxiety, you don't realize that when you start to have these fears, your body goes into an automatic response, and there's no blood going there.
There's
None
no
whatsoever.
blood going there. And if you're in fight and flight, your body is sort of thinking that the person next to you is dangerous, which is not too sexy.
No, or at least the situation is dangerous, for sure. The situation is. So that's a problem. Well, I think we've come almost to the end of this program. Any last words, Sandra, that you want to impart on our listeners? Give us a few words of hope, and because you're good at that.
You know what? There's so much hope. It's really my mission. And with couples, for example, you're with someone who has anxiety. There's so much you can do. You can talk about it. You can also create a positive environment of reinforcement when the person is in a relaxed state to reinforce that. And I can't help but mention the concept of therapy, because therapy is not only for the anxious person. If you're in a relationship with someone who has anxiety, you may be unwittingly enabling them. So you have to know when to push them, when not to push them. And you also have to learn to be patient. But if you guys work together, the sky's the limit. Anxiety is so treatable. We are so proud of saying we have a 95% success rate, and it's conservative. It's really conservative.
See, that's important. 95% success rate, which means completely treatable.
Absolutely.
People have to hear that, and they've got to go and do it just so that they don't have to live with that kind of
And Dr.
feeling.
Laurie, it does not take long. That's another good piece of news.
That's very good. No, 95% success rate, and it doesn't take long. Sandra, thank you so much for being here. And if people want to get in touch with you at the Montreal Centre for Anxiety and Depression, what's the number?
514-777-4530. And you have the website already. We'd be happy to hear from you.
helpforanxietydepression.com. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks to Brad Smith in Master Control. Thanks to all of you who participated in the program and shared your stories with us.
Listen to Passion with Dr. Laurie Betito, live weeknights 10 to 11 on CJAD and CJAD.com.